But now, let's hop on a flight to the City of Love, which has suddenly captured the hearts of several Australian journalists, all at the same moment.
Emmanuel Macron and his glamorous wife Brigitte entertain at the Elysee Palace in Paris on Monday.
So, how come they all decided it was time to do a story? Well, as they all admitted, they were paid to go. And who can blame them? And while the coverage was mostly glowing, there was nothing terrible they failed to tell their readers. Which is more than you can say for this puff in the West Australian, about a trade mission to a celebrated Central Asian dictatorship.
Baku to the future. The unlikely love affair between Perth and Baku business.
Haven't heard of the affair between WA and Azerbaijan? Nor had we, until the West devoted a 3-page spread to the exciting news, telling us
there are some striking similarities between Perth and Baku. Both are secular, well-educated societies with a love for good food and wine and a quirky appreciation of Eurovision.
And, of course, they're both freedom-loving democracies. Although, bizarrely, in 2013, Azerbaijan's president, Ilham Aliyev, was so popular that he was voted in for a third term before the polls even opened.
Oops! Azerbaijan released election results before voting had even started.
And so popular that 2 years later, the major opposition parties didn't even bother showing up, with the BBC noting,
in the past 2 years, the Azeri authorities have jailed almost all critical voices, among them journalists, civil society activists and human rights lawyers.
None of that made it into the West's 3-page feature. And nor did we learn that the country ranks 162 out of 180 on the World Press Freedom Index, behind Iraq and Egypt. But, to be fair, this was an article about how Australians could do business there. And as the paper gushed,
Azerbaijan's impressive financial statistics, its opportunities and the raft of government incentives are dazzling, to say the least.
But what about corruption, I hear you ask, which is something that businessmen need to know about. Down in the 47th paragraph, the West Australian assured us they're sorting all that out.
The government has made a concerted effort to address perceptions of corruption following Azerbaijan's 119th ranking out of 168 countries, alongside Russia, in the World Bank's Transparency International's 2015 Corruption Perceptions Index.
Yep, 119 out of 168. And that's before this year's scandal about the Azerbaijani laundromat, in which $2.9 billion was laundered out of the country into offshore bank accounts of Azerbaijani leaders, or to pay off friendly European politicians and sympathetic journalists. That merited just one paragraph in the West story, which assured us that
current allegations appear to be political rather than corporate.
Ah, well, that's all right then. So, who funded this PR jaunt for the paper? Yes, you've guessed.
The reporter's trip was paid for by the Azerbaijan Consulate.
Surprise, surprise. Now, we're not suggesting that the West Australian has had millions of dollars pumped through its bank accounts, but accepting free flights and hotels from a corrupt country that locks up journalists and then ignoring or downplaying the country's problems is not a good look. The West Australia disagrees and says it did cover the country's problems adequately.